So, dear colleagues, let's start. I'm very glad to have Cezary Rosiński here, who has been awarded by a fellowship of Zdeňka Pešta for even the second time in the same year. So it's a great occasion to have such a great guy here. And Cezary has done within his second fellowship conversion of PBL data, that means Polish bibliographic, literary bibliography data, into Mark 21. And then we were trying to interconnect them with our, that means Czech literary bibliographic data, in the one roof of the viewfind system. And we have came to some quite interesting results, I do hope. And it's my pleasure to pass the floor to Cezary, who will present the whole job he has done in more detail.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and for your hospitality and kindness. And today, as Wojta said, I would like to present the effect of my work. So I prepared 4 steps in that presentation. The first one, I believe most of you are familiar with the name of PBL or Polish Literary Bibliography, but perhaps not everyone knows our website or how our data schema looks like. So I would like to shortly introduce Polish Literary Bibliography to you. Then I would like to show you the script and data preparation for converting from internal format of PBL to Mark 21, and finally the result. And that result will be also given in viewfind software, and Wojta agreed to explain a bit how it works. And the last step is future steps, so what we can actually do with that computing of data and what could be done in the future with data-driven research on that data set. So Polish literary bibliography has quite a history. It's been produced in 70-year-old department in the Institute of Literary Research of the Polish Academy of Science, and it covers a period from 1944 to 2003, but only the period from 1989 to 2003 is it's available online. The rest is in printed books. We are currently trying to retro-digitalize those printed volumes, and we counted approximately the whole scope of PBL is like 2.5 million bibliographical records. So it's quite a lot. We have developed 2 websites. The first is the old one, and the second is still beta version, but with wider data formats. So this is the... Oh, okay. This is unexpected. Let's try.
Let's continue.
Okay, so I will skip the main pages for to URL for PBL. Instead of that, I would like to show you our internal data format, which looks like that. It's quite easy. It's quite difficult to read because it's so small. So I can make it a bit bigger. Of course, then we can see only a part of it, but it's all about the connections in our SQL database. How each field presents a table, different table, and those arrows are the connections between each tables. And perhaps it's quite difficult to read, but it shows the specification of PBL, and I believe what should be easier to read are our records. So this is an example of book. First is a section of bibliography. You can see, perhaps, yeah, you can see 4 steps: foreign literatures, Czech literature, and the final is section when we provide records about some authors. This is kind or type of records as book with literature. This is creator, author. Then you have title here, co-authors. This is printing house, year, physical description, and annotation, which could be a comment or a content of the book. In that case, you have another information about the content, number and bibliographer who is responsible for that exact record, and what is the extremely important part in PBL, which are connections. Here we have 2 reviews of that book, and we can see them as well. And in that case, you have information that record is about that record, which is back again the book that I described. The second one is an article from the magazine. So actually the structure could be similar, but here we have something which is different, and this is the source, title of magazine, year, number, and pages, and here we have review. So we should expect that here is the book, which is the subject of that review. And I show you only those 2 types of data because I computed only books and articles in magazines for my project. But to show how specific PBL could be, I would like to show you one more page. The results of searching for Olga Tokarczuk. And as you can see, we have 4 different Olgas Tokarczuk in our database. The first one is the name of creator. So if you are producing literature, you have that record. This is authorship, which is the signature under the book or under the text or under the article. This is register for co-authors, such as translators or editors. And here is index of names that could appear in titles or in annotations. The main problem is that 4 records for the same person are not connected anyhow in our database. So we are currently trying to follow every connection inside of database, but it's difficult to find them all. If we know people and those are very important and very famous writers, then it's of course easier. but we can imagine the situation when few people has the same first name and last name, and this is something difficult to decide. Is it the same person or not? The next step is the code actually, and I mapped the internal format of PBL to Mark 21 for books and for articles, and in numbers I was able to upload to ViewFind over than 700,000 of records, which is approximately 130,000 for books and almost 600,000 for articles, only from the period from 1989 to 2003. I wrote over than 1,100 lines of code in R, and I also used Mark Edit to prepare the readable, computer readable version of Mark. I will delete it to show you. I prepared a sample of data. Those are only books from Czech literature. It's about 600 of them. And first I will run the code, and then I will slightly explain what happened. Yeah, okay, it's done. And this is the original view of data from PBL. Those are, sorry, it's in Polish, but basically you have every bibliographical information here, including the four person authorities, for creators, for authors, and the rest of fields. Sometimes one record is written in several lines. In that case, this is this record ID. Yeah. Those two lines represents one book because of the connections, and if we want to show all the connections, sometimes we need to repeat rows. And I needed to split that table for each information, and this is empty table for the result, which includes names or titles of mark fields. And after that, I was fulfilling those columns with data, and I proceeded step by step, field by field. This is, let's say, field 100 only. So now it looks like Mark 21, or almost like Mark 21. And here is the result. This is the result for those 600 books. Of course, I know that we have still a lot of blank spots in the data. For instance, our leader is extremely poor, and the same field number 008, but basically we can now present data of PPL in Mark 21. This of course not that rich as it could be, but basically is easy to read by librarians or bibliographers outside the PBL, and what is extremely important for us is also readable by computers. So we can use already given software for Mark 21, upload our data and see the result or compare with something else, which actually is the next step, because with huge Wojta help, I was able to put those data to ViewFind right next to your data, which means we finally have Czech and Polish bibliographical records in one place, so we can start to think about comparing those data. And this is the site. And if Wojta, I would like to ask you to comment.
Okay. So I will try to shortly provide you information. How does it look like? Just for your information, this is another installation of ViewFind. This is really developer's version, let's say really work in progress. This is not that official beta version we are trying to provide within a few weeks, but this is really a version we have with our IT guys for testing of the data. So the interface is quite poor and quite simple, but I think the most important things can be shown within that interface. So basically, if you check or if you try to have a general overlook on the data, you can see that currently we have here 1,300,000 of records which are, as Czarek said, or which comes from our and Polish literary bibliography. You can make some basic observation concerning the most frequent formats of the records. Of course, these are the
if I may,
the articles.
You can change the language for Czech.
Yeah. Okay. So
I thought it would be easier to read. Now it's.
I will change to, or I will switch to Czech language, and yeah, so you can see that the article is the most frequent form of record in both of our databases. Here you have the list of the authors. Of course, the more frequent are the Czech one because our database covers the longer period than the Polish one. But the most frequent Polish author Stanisław Baranczak is in quite well or quite sympathetic, let's say, 6th position or something like that. So based on that, we can unify the register of the name of the authors. Currently, it is not so that we are able to say that Baranczak in Polish bibliography will be connected with our one, because we do not have the same identifier of that person. So the heading for him is different in both of the databases, but it's only a technical problem which can be solved quite easily in the future. So this is something concerning the authors. Here we can go for forums and channels. This is of course a problem of, let's say, multilinguality of the register, because as you can see, we have poems in Polish, which contains over 160,000 of records, and Czech poetry is somewhere down because we do not have provide a keyword poetry, but Czech poetry and I don't know, Italian poetry and so on and so on. So in this aspect, our data are not so comparable. But it is also a question of mapping which can be done somehow in the future. On the other case, concerning review, you can see that the review is by far the most frequent type of record in our database, and the second most frequent record in Polish database. So it is some general observation which is quite expected, but we can prove it based on concrete data. So this is as to forms and genres, and then we have languages, but because Polish data are or doesn't contain information about language of the record, it doesn't show nearly nothing at the moment. And the last register, which is common for both of the databases, is the region. So here you can see that, of course, the capital cities of both lands are the most frequent, such as Warsaw and Praha, and also is the thing of mapping of the values in the databases. And I think that quite simply we would be able to map Warsaw in our database to Warsaw in Polish database, and count them within one value inside of this register. So these are some basic observations, and because of that beta version or testing version, there are currently no other registers, but it's also a technical thing, because once we will be able to put it or upload it to our main installation, we will have the register of source documents, and I don't know, subject headings for persons, and so on, which can offer a quite more interesting overview of the data. The other thing I would like to show you is the overview of Polish data. We have created a keyword PBL, which is in every record of Polish literary database. That means it shows us only the Polish record, so we can filter it quite simply, but it's only also a technical solution for this purpose. And as you can see, for example, you can search for most frequent topics inside of the Polish database. Of course, the most frequent topics are concerning the foreign literature, and you can see that Czech literature is quite high in that list. It is, I don't know if fifth or sixth most frequent foreign literature within the Polish database, which is quite sympathetic for us. So this is something like general overview of Polish data, and on the other side you can analyze also the list of the authors and so on. You can filter it, I don't know, for example, on Henryk Sienkiewicz, and see that there are some connections to translation. I think it will be some joint volumes of some translations from different languages. So because of it, you can see here these informations, but you can see the main authors which are dealing with Sienkiewicz texts, which are probably the translator or even researchers on Henryk Sienkiewicz. And you can see the most frequent genres about or concerning records of containing Henryk Sienkiewicz as an author. So basically, I think it is working. It has shown us some general information that we are able to insert Polish data and Czech data under one roof, and that has some potential to show some interesting overview of the data. On the other hand, it shows also that there would be and will be in the future quite a lot of work to be done on the mapping of the values and on the mapping of the single fields, which we haven't time, and energy would be a bad word, but let's say we haven't time to do this. But I think it, from the technical point of view, it would be quite simply solvable. The other thing would be that, of course, Polish data would probably need some cleaning because of the current state of the database. But we do hope that we have provided some first step for interconnection of both our databases under one roof. And we do hope that maybe next year or over next year we will be able to present something like Central European Literary Bibliography beta version provided to the general audience. So that's maybe from my side, and I will pass the word back to Charlie.
Thank you very much. What I was saying a lot about interconnections and mapping the data, I wanted to show you one thing that we tried to do, because we were wondering how we can connect our data. So we believe there are two possible ways. The first is to cover some elements from records with the exact same name, which could be the same name in Polish database and in Czech database, which could be sometimes difficult to manage. So we find that the other approach is better. So we think that the basic future steps are mapping and joining authority files and subject heading, cleaning the data, what Wojta also mentioned, because our data were were created in different software, in different environment than Mark 21. So this is the reason why we simply needed to skip some elements. And so if it's towards to Central European Literary Bibliography, then we are of course thinking about connecting other sources. So if we were able in 3 weeks actually do that job, then with more amount of time we definitely will be able to connect better our data and perhaps even other databases such as Hungarian and Slovakian. So we are in Central Europe. But I skipped the second approach to connect our data, and I wanted to show you that in most of records we were able to provide identifiers for people from a VIAF. I will show you the... Yes, I hope it's going to work. Yes. VIAF is Virtual International Authority File, which works with over than 40 or 50 national libraries, including Polish National Library and Czech National Library. So it's like an aggregator for data. In some, I will use Sokarzy once again, if I may. So we have the record of Olga Tokarczuk, and here we have the network of connection that particular person in, or presence that particular person in many national libraries or bibliographies, including Polish, and yes, and there's a Czech one. So basically, we used that information, which is VIAF identifier for the person, and here I have Pavel Kohout, sorry, and I will copy his VIAF and try to put in the URL. Yeah, and we have the authority file for Pavel Kohout, which is I think very good way to connect, because both bibliographies could preserve those internal names or the ways how they describe a person, But if we include also the identifier, then we are able to connect those data for person authorities as well as for other bibliographical elements such as subject headings. Okay, that will be all. Thank you for your patience and thank you for listening to me.
Oh.
Is it all? Yeah, yes, it is all. Pity. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
So, any questions?
I have a question. How much information did you actually have to drop on the way while transferring the data to Mark 21?
Actually, not too many for articles and for books.
I think nearly none.
No, there was something definitely. Mostly because of connections in SQL databases. So basically, we have some description for writers, and we needed to drop those descriptions because there was no place in bibliographical record for it. This is the area of authority file to preserve those types of information. So it was sometimes difficult to provide clear boundaries between the way how you describe your data in Mark 21 and how we do it in our internal format. But basically, what we had to drop is types of data, because we collect also information about events and a lot of different types of information which are not well suited for Mark 21. And that was actually the main reason why we choose only articles from magazines and books to proceed them.
So in fact, it is not a viable option to transfer altogether to Mark 21 because it would drop quite a lot of your data.
Yes. So actually, we are not thinking about switching to Mark 21 because we invested so much money and work in developing our new database and new website, but we want to map our internal format to some other formats to be understood by some other institutions, some other bibliographers, and some other softwares to do that. So basically the idea is to create our data the way as we did before, but provide very good prepared script to mutate the data for format Mark 21 or other formats in the future.
Any other question? Observation?
I'm quite curious about this, mapping the two databases together, and about how you were thinking about proceeding with subject headings, which seem to be very important and very different from each other. And I would assume that you want to keep both information and actually create another maybe field that would actually create a new set of subject headings that would be mappable to both of the databases, so that you can actually keep them apart and at the same time have something shared in the databases.
Yes, actually, the topic is still open because we haven't decided yet, but I could imagine that we can preserve original shape of the data in some text files or link to them, and in that case we could not lose anything, but basically we were thinking in the linked open data way. So we would like to preserve our information, and we would like to preserve your original information, but connect them using some other sources, such as VIAF. In that case, the VIAF will work as a dictionary to translate one dataset for another. But also the case is, I believe that our data could be more rich. Now we have information about in genres, about poetry, but in the same record, but in the different field, you have information about Czech literature, for instance. So based on the connection of those two fields, we can assume that is Czech poetry, right? So maybe we could develop some mining in those data to make it more suitable for Mark 21, because based on that connection, we can tell that we have that kind of information already, and perhaps it will be very good to show that this is ready and prepared record or bibliographical material.
Yeah, I will maybe add, we have found that in Polish database there are some specific internal classification, and we have used different mark fields. That means some subject headings are usable for the classical 600 fields, some other not, so we have used some internal field for some type of classification that was field 590, and I don't exactly know what is it about. Then there is a field 964 for former, or let's say older classification, which is currently not used at all. So we have some of classification we have moved to that field. Yes, so we are thinking in that way that generally the record shall contain all of the record, or let's say the most or the majority of the information which is achievable, but simultaneously in a different fields. That means for Poles it would be maybe good to have their internal classification within the records, but simultaneously there shall be the same information changed in some other field, which is interconnected to the general dictionary or general thesaurus.
Yes.
And that would be probably the logic of the future interconnection.
Yeah, perhaps we should prepare some documentation how.
Exactly, documentation dictionary of the
yes, exactly.
So with a vision of actually including further databases in more languages, you could end up with a huge mess actually of data.
Yes, of course.
I think it is very important actually to prepare such a dictionary of everything,
of course,
of the fields,
allow me to be
subject headings and authors and all that stuff.
Yes, allow me to be optimistic. This is the result of 3 weeks of work. So give us half a year, and we definitely could present you the. Thank you very much for that. And we will be able to show you the better shape of the data. We also in PBL we have some experience, because we are mining data in National Library of Poland, and those are marked data as well. And we are mining the data and extracting them to import to our data schema. So here, that activity on Pešta scholarship was actually doing similar thing, but in the other direction. And I believe this is important for us to have the possibility to download data from Mark 21 to our internal format, also to upload our data to Mark 21. And to be honest, I had some doubts, some second thoughts about the possibility of that, but now I can see results of the work, and I know that is possible and worth to do.
I would like to ask about what kind of other advantages you would like to offer to providers of the database from other Central European countries to create this huge and I suppose amazing project of Central European literary bibliography, because Czech and Polish database seems to be very local, and where do you want to make this place of connection between your data and data of other countries?
So that was the reason why I mentioned Hungarian and Slovakian bibliographies, because this is the area of Visegrad activity, and I believe we know a bit about data from Hungarian database, and we know already that they have their data in Mark 21. So in that case, I think it will be quite easy to manage the connection. But of course, there is a specific of language of the data, and this is the case of dictionaries. And I think we could, with some work, provide those dictionaries, and it will be possible. So that case of connecting Czech and Polish data describes two major issues. The first one is format of data, and the second one is language. And here we were able to manage with format, but we skipped the part of language. But now we can see that this is also important. So I believe if we will able to cover those two areas, then we can merge or join quite successfully any data sets.
Okay. Another question?
Perhaps not.
If really not, so thank you for your attention. Thank you for your coming, and especially thanks Čarek for his job
Thank you
done
very
and
much.
for his presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we are looking forward what we will see in 6 months.
Yes. Me too.